my stuff on Substack. Right now, I'm releasing my Substack probably in about 2 weeks, and that's where I'm going to come with like the really great information. That's what I feel like is the future is some a platform like Substack. So I don't like you said,
We're on
YouTube.
Substack too
Oh,
as well.
nice.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know that. I'll go ahead and
I
subscribe.
release
I
it for
didn't.
free on Substack. You could watch it for free. And then I put my premium content on there that I do on my website and on Rockfin on there as well. So yeah, I try to put it
Awesome.
everywhere I can. And it's like kind of crazy because I personally believe that our host that we host the audio on is messing with our numbers as well. I catch them all
Mm,
the time. I'll be like, let's say I'm just gonna throw out a random number. Let's say I see it at 50,000, right? And then I'll
mhm,
come back like 2 minutes later, it's 35,000.
mhm.
They
That
do it all the
sucks.
yeah, they do it and like it's happened to me so much that I just know the game, the playbook every effing
Right.
time, dude. Every effing time. So enough of that. So we're living in crazy times.
Mhm.
Um we're seeing these billionaires building these giant bunkers and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And so like not all of us are billionaires. A very small percentage of the population are billionaires. Are there things that we can do to protect ourselves, do you think? Or where do you want to start?
Yeah, I think we can protect ourselves because, God gave us nature. And when we mimic nature, it kind of makes us anti-fragile. You ever hear that term, anti-fragile?
No, but I love it.
Anti-fragile is when you become more resilient, the more chaos that's thrown at you. It's probably like my favorite book that was ever written by the author Nassim Taleb. And it's like what he pointed out. He wrote this book called Black Swan, and in Black Swan, he says all these Black Swan events, things that you could never predict, when they hit us, our life changes relative to everything else before that. It's like an initiation. And so his second book after that was Anti-Fragile. And in Anti-Fragile, he shows these systems that get better when there's more chaos. And so after I read Anti-Fragile, I was like, I'm going to be anti-fragile. Like I'm
I
going to
love
make
that,
my
dude.
so that was a huge inspiration for me to go that way. And the best way to do that is to biomimic. So like you look at nature and things like that, if you can kind of get in tune with your natural surroundings or at least live somewhat near a natural surrounding, you're going to be much better off than being in like a artificial box somewhere next to like a sea of concrete.
I'm so into this, bro. I am so into this. I'm
Yeah.
just part of me is like, do I want to do it in California? Do I want to do somewhere there? Do I want to come neighbors with with Johnny's farm? Like, I'm open minded to all of it, dude. I just
Johnny,
got
where's your farm?
We're in North Carolina, very,
Oh,
very
how
rural North Carolina,
are
uh,
you in the west
south,
part or the east part?
central North Carolina, south of Fayetteville, near the border, right on the border, actually, with South Carolina. Uh,
Okay.
it's
Okay.
really, I mean, I can't orient it really much more than that. It's like 40 minutes from Southern Pines, if you know that area, like south of
uh,
Southern Pines.
Johnny's home's address in the links below. Johnny's home address
It's really, it's just no,
below.
it's just in the middle of no, positively in the boondocks, so it's yeah, hard to.
Yeah, my family's from just northwest of you in Black Mountain. Like that's where I grew up in summertime going all the time, and now that got kind of wiped off the map.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad, dude. That's so
Yeah,
sad. Let's okay,
yeah.
so let's get back on track. So these black swan events happen, these anti-fragile resistance. So what do you want to do? Because it's like it just seems like they're cranking it up. Like
Yeah.
the masters of mankind are cranking it up. I don't know what it is. You had the Deagle report trying to tell us that we're going to get down to 50 million people by the end of 2025, which is the most insane
Hmm.
prediction. Um, where do we start, dude? I mean, like,
Well, just to reference the Bill Deagle stuff, like most of what Bill Deagle like actually predicted was utter garbage. Just to give people like a he was like he was such a fear monger. Like I ended up reading a lot of his other predictions and like Thank goodness, like he was way off the mark with a lot of things. So it's not as crazy as that. There's historical precedence to what's happening now. Like we're at the end of a debt cycle. Whenever there's an end of a debt cycle, what usually happens is the money makers, the money exchangers, they create a new market. They don't just end the old one. And then they create all this interference to get everybody like, looking left while they're doing everything right. They're zigging while everybody's zagging. And then they create chaotic circumstances that make the old asset base worthless and makes it so people have to buy into the new asset
Yeah,
base.
dude, you're so right, bro. That is so right.
Yeah.
100%.
So that's what's happening now, like with the cryptocurrencies and all the things that are dealing with using our biomarkers as our new sign of nature. The whole new system is like right now, like all securities are still based off a human signature. Like when you go and sign something, when you do it even digitally, your sign of nature is what has worth. That worth then is securitized and bonded, and that creates all the money that's out there, like all of it. And so what they're trying to do, because there's not enough to float all of their shenanigans, they're saying, no, your willful signature. Because the thing about a signature is it takes your will to do it. Even if let's say it's not purely a contract, because in a contract you have to have four aspects for a contract to go through. Like, let's say you're an unwitting dupe and you sign something that you don't know about, like terms and agreements, right? It
Yeah.
still took your will to do it. Well, the new system is like, no. There's no consent. Your biology is the consent.
What?
And we're going to make your biomarkers the new basis for which we make securities. Like all this technology, all these phones, all the things that they're doing to the sky for this quick transit of information is because they're literally going to be like, how they'll take mortgages these days and they'll group them all together. It's called a tranche, and then they'll sell those tranches for debt. You know how they do that? Have you ever heard that term, tranche?
No.
No.
Yeah, I've heard it with respect to the economic collapse. Yeah, how they tranche different mortgages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what they'll do is they'll take well, I won't say all. They'll take let's say 80% of the C plus mortgages that they've given, and they'll bundle them. Bundle is another word for tranche. They'll bundle them, and then they'll sell that debt to another institution as like it's a security. Well,
Yeah.
what they're
Isn't
gonna
that what
want
they
to,
did with the Goldman Sachs and
yeah,
our the real estate bubble, where they
yeah,
basically
exactly.
had this guy create this portfolio that they knew was going to fail. They told their investors to invest in it, then they took insurance out on it, and that's what caused.
Right, right.
And nobody went to jail for that, by the way. Nobody.
Well, here's the fun thing, and it's so genius and diabolical at the same time. It's kind of fun to watch in a way. So we know these days, just on the very basic level, if you own stocks, let's say you own stocks in airline companies, and you just so happen to get some information that some tragedy was about to occur with, like, say, 7 planes, and you go ahead and just short, the your stocks in the airlines before everybody else does. You would happen to make a huge amount of return if there were, let's say, a tragedy to happen. Well, this happens all the time now with commodities exchanges with weather. Like a lot of people don't know, there's a commodities exchange in Chicago. They short water, they short soil, they short oranges, they short soybeans, they short everything. And there's all these clauses when it comes to insurance that have to do, like, act of God clauses that usually have to do with the weather. So I've seen this with where I lived in Florida. Like I'm a Floridian. I grew up in Florida. And I just saw this last year with all my friends and family that live in Florida. They ran this scam with the insurance companies where like if you had this little, if you had, if your roof didn't meet the standards to the insurance companies, they would drop your insurance. Well, my parents have a perfectly new house. Like their house is like 7 years old. They had a couple cracked ceramic tiles on the top of their roof. They had to
What?
replace. Listen to this. They had to replace their entire roof at their cost. It was like 40 grand to replace their roof, and it was a perfectly fine roof. The contractor that did it was like, "There's nothing wrong with this roof, but we have to do it because the insurance company." They did it so that they could have their insurance. Well, how many people don't have the cash to do that?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then these hurricanes roll through, and it just totally takes, like, I'm a builder, right? I build domes, I build all these things. I know what it costs to do things. Like most people don't have 60, 70, $100,000 just laying around to fix problems of water damage or whatever occurs when these storms come through. And these insurance companies, guess what? They tranche their policies. This should be like the most illegal thing in the world. They literally like, they'll say, okay, these people live in this specific area. There's hasn't been a flood here in X amount of years or whatever. And then all of a sudden they'll sell that group of policies to a bank or another securitized lender. And then that they make that an asset. And now you have people betting on whether or not it's going to fail or whether or not it's going to succeed. And everything like that is being gamified because they keep trying to expand the fake money pool. And so that fake money pool means that people have to gamble more. People have to do all these side bets to get to keep the velocity of money going at what it's going at.
That is so insane to me that you can bet on weather and tragedy and
Well, they won't say they're betting on weather. That's not what they'll say is they'll go, "Oh, it looks like this year, it's like the old movie Trading Places with Dan Aykroyd and
Eddie
Eddie
Murphy.
Murphy. We're waiting on the reports of the orange juice, and that was like the 80s, right? Where they were literally waiting for a report, a hard copy report. Now you can literally order the weather. Like you can order, like in certain states, you can say, "Oh, I want my skies to be clear for my wedding." Like if you have the money, you can order the weather. So it's
That
a
is
thing, man.
so crazy. So Jim Lee was talking about, and I don't know what company, I can't remember the name of the company, where you can pay them to steer the weather opposite place. Like Bill Gates is on the board. You could steer it like, oh, hey, dude, this giant weather storm is coming. It's going to wreck your crops or destroy your oil fields. Oh, here's some money. Send it the other way.
Definitely. So you see how that affects the commodities market.
Oh, that's
You see how that affects the commodities market. So let's say you're saying, okay, we're going to have umpteen bushels of corn this year, right? And you're betting both sides of it. You could just print how much ever money you want to print because you're the one who's actually pulling the levers on the weather.
Oh my God, dude. So business people can control the weather.
Yeah. Like you go to like Jim Lee and I actually talked about this. I was on his podcast. You can go to Stanford University, you can go to MIT University, you can go to Caltech University, you can go to all these great institutions and go to school for geoengineering. Like I think in the United States, there's 70 contractors for high aerosol atmospheric dispersants. Like anybody that's skied through Colorado and through Wyoming and through all those areas along the Rockies, they very well know that they've done things just to create snow whenever they've needed fresh powder. It's a very it's not an uncommon thing. It's only an uncommon thing to the uneducated.
Yeah, I mean they did it in Beijing, right? And for the Winter Olympics in 2022, they used cloud seeding to make snow. The Chinese kind of owned that. They were kind of proud of it, that they.
Oh yeah, and I've been a part of enough human ceremonies to see humans control the weather. Like I've been probably in about 50 or 60 ayahuasca ceremonies, and without fail, when the medicine hits, the weather flips 180.
Really?
So
Whoa.
if it's a really clear sky, then immediately the rain comes.
And you're sure
If
that's
it's
not the
raining
weather
in
in your head, right? That's the weather.
no,
You know what I mean?
no, because I had to build Maloka. I built like 4 or 5 different Malokas. And so I was like very interested in the weather because I was there. My structures were protecting people from the outside. So
Would you say it has to be more than a couple people to be able to do that?
I think so. I think so.
Hmm.
I think like there's lots of, traditions out there with Native Americans that you would have like a medicine man that could control the weather. He would go do the rain dance and things like
I was
that. And
about to say that. So you believe in that? That 100% is, you think
I,
that's
I, uh, I've seen it. I know it. Like nobody can convince me different. That's where Jim Lee and I kind of differ a little bit is like he thinks that it would take way too much energy to go ahead and change the weather, but he's looking at it from a caloric perspective, like a heat conversion to electricity. I've been in the orgone accumulator world forever. So like the Wilhelm Reich cloudbusters, I've built probably a dozen of those. And so in a Wilhelm Reich cloudbuster, it looks like an old Roman fasces. It literally looks like a fasces. It's like has these long copper tubes, and it's embedded into organite. And this organite usually has a conductor. And if you put that conductor in flowing water and point that at clouds, the clouds dissipate. And so to me, I've seen the weather controlled through people and through orgone accumulation devices. So I don't think it's a direct electricity to joule ratio that most modern scientists talk about. I think there's other things at play.
Dude, we're talking sorcery here, dog. We're talking
You know,
energy
you guys,
manipulation.
I've literally listened to every single one of your podcasts. You've had plenty of people on there talking about orgone accumulators. Orgone accumulation and Wilhelm, you've heard of Wilhelm, right? Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
Wilhelm
for
Reich.
those who haven't, tell us about it.
So Wilhelm Reich he was a contemporary of Freud, but he thought Freud was an idiot because Freud did all of his work on people's pathos. And Wilhelm Reich is like, why are we only studying the degenerate aspect of human? Why aren't we studying the logos aspect of human? And so he was creating a phenomenology around the healthy human. And he was showing that, like, and he was a scientist, like he had one of the world's most powerful microscopes. And he was showing that organisms, when they're reproducing, they produce a field, like this blue light field. And he termed it orgone for orgasm. It's like, the origin of orgasm and orgone. He's like, yeah, that got your eyes perked up. And so that energy of like reproduction, and when something's healthy enough to reproduce, it has this field. All my boys and I, when we were coming up, whenever we saw a really hot woman, we'd be like, she's healthy. It's sort of that good, she's producing a lot of orgone, right? So that energy, right? That energy that's like this fertility energy that's present with very healthy things. That energy is actually palpable. It's a real thing, and he could measure it. And so he created this thing called an orgone accumulator, which is a combination of copper, a dielectric material, and a hydrocarbon, like a felt. And if you layered it, it would concentrate this orgone to the point where if like you were looking at it with night vision goggles, it would blind you with the night vision goggles, like in the red light spectrum. And so there's been people throughout the years that have made all different inventions off of what he found out in what he found. And Wilhelm Reich, at the end of his life, he was called a kook and all these things, like he was crazy because he was modifying the weather in Maine. He figured out, and it's something I've been talking about profusely with people forever, is the whole thing with the Roman fasces. Like you guys know what I mean when I say the Roman fasces?
No, what is that?
It looks like a Gatling gun. So like, you see on all of like the heraldry of war that we're given, I don't know how much of it I believe historically, but almost in all the heraldry of war, you'll see like, you'll see the general, and you'll see flags, and then you'll see this you'll see his minstrels behind him, and then you'll see somebody carrying a fasces, which, technically is a bundle of sticks, right? But when you look at the fasces, like at the Washington Memorial, where you see George Washington sitting there with his hands are on top of two fasces. It's either the Lincoln Memorial or the Washington Memorial. I forget which one it is. When you watch them speak in Congress, what's behind them? They have this flag, right? The American flag, and then they have the wreath, and then they have fasces. Why do they have fasces everywhere? And the fasces to me is the imperial sign of we own the weather. Like literally, like Jim Lee told you guys, like the Air Force said by 2025 that they would own the sky. Like they said it. They're like, they made the declaration in 1996. They said by 2025 we will own the sky. Well, what does that mean? It's getting back to, they're just telling you what they've always done, is that they've had this ability to actually use, it's called a biocondenser. That's another way of saying an organ accumulator. It's a way of taking telluric energy. Telluric energy is the energy from the ground that propagates horizontally and funneling it up into the sky. And when you can do that, you can change the weather.
Dude, it's the Lincoln Memorial, and you're totally right. There he is with these two bundles of sticks.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Well, we're told now a technical bundle of sticks is called a faggot.
Yeah,
dude. But the Roman fasces is different, because the Roman fasces is actually it looks like a Gatling gun. You guys saw like Predator back in the day, where Jesse the Body Ventura is shooting that minigun. That minigun looks like a fasces. That's what it is. It's like it's a bunch of tubes in a circle. And I'm obviously, obsessed with that because I build domes and I build things that are round and curvilinear and stuff like that. But I've built these things that are called cloudbusters, and they essentially look like a Roman fasces that, like I said, is situated in a bucket of organite. And how is it possible that I can affect things thousands and thousands and thousands of feet away from me using no electricity?
Dude,
there's something else
so crazy.
Yeah, you can see that in the cloud seeding program in UAE. They use the thing they use looks very much like a minigun too. Yeah, it's like a bunch of tubes in a sort of cylinder.
And there's all crazy to hear you say all this stuff, and then listen to all these progressive retards on Twitter making fun of people who think that you can manipulate the weather. It's just the arrogance of ignorance is so insane to me right now. How arrogant people are about shit they don't know.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, the smartest people too. I mean, excuse me, the most intelligent people too. Their arrogance about what they don't know is so mind-blowing. It's so egotistical. It blows my fucking mind.
Yeah. That's why I build domes, because usually when I build domes for people, the people that like domes are just as weird as I am. I don't have to deal with the standard populace that much.
Unbelievable. We are battling the misinformed and the arrogantly misinformed. That is the war right now. The war isn't misinformation. The war is misguided arrogance and ignorance. Definitely.
Yeah, I just tell people that don't believe any of this stuff, I just tell them, look into big agriculture. Right now, you can spend anywhere from $1,000 to $100,000 on these radionics devices, and this is known science. Like farmers around the world do this. They'll stick this transmitter in their farm wherever they're wanting to have fertility, and this transmitter will just distribute this frequency of fertility and whatever it is that they want to grow, and that grows better. Mm-hmm. It's radionics, and radionics works on a different level. It's not about the amplitude of the energy that you're using. It's about the clarity of the signal you're sending.
Sorcery.
Yeah. Well, in a way, you could consider magic, because what's the saying?
Well, let me just say, maybe sorcery isn't. What I mean is mysticism. Like Like you're able to manipulate energy for
Yeah.
positive stuff. Sorcery is when you use it for negative stuff. That's my opinion. But
Right.
mysticism is when you use energy manipulation for positive stuff, like growing food and all that stuff, like you're talking about right now.
Right. Well, Hermetic, like, let's just get into Hermeticism because most of the mystery schools were based on the Hermetic principles. The Hermetic principles are what have been demonized by, let's just call it the controlling elite right now. The people that want to have agency over you. I don't like calling them the elite. The class of beings that want to have agency over you. So what they've done is they've demonized Hermeticism. Hermeticism is this knowledge of our interaction with nature. Because the more we know how to signal nature, nature signals us back, and we live in literally like straight abundance. Like if you know how to signal nature correctly, you're met with like 10x, like 100x. And the easiest example, any little kid knows, like, wait a minute, one tomato gave me 1,000 seeds where I can grow 1,000 tomatoes that will give me that much. Like, it's unfathomable amount of abundance. But the way the debt cycles work, the debt cycles have to have our mind, have to have our consciousness rooted in always in the lack consciousness. Like there's not enough. In everything that we're I shouldn't say everything. The majority of what is propagated is this whole thing that there's not enough, there's not enough, there's not enough. And when you start to believe that, you won't see the abundance that's around you. But literally, like ever since I've become more engaged in the natural world, I never fear for a lack of abundance because it's infinite. It's literally infinite.